podcast audience. Pleasure to be speaking with you again. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Rob Rothman. I am a practicing ophthalmologist, a glaucoma specialist by training. I spend about 50% of my time clinically managing patients in New York. The remainder of my time I spend running InFocus Capital Partners, which is an ophthalmology-focused venture capital fund. We closed our first fund last year and are actively in the process of raising funds for our second fund. Having said that, today's podcast guest is a special one. And for those of you who are involved in the ophthalmology business community, there is a 100% chance that at some point you have crossed paths with Dr. Jay Parekh. There is no question that you have absolutely interacted with him in some way. He has been pretty much a ubiquitous face and voice in the world of ophthalmology. So just by way of formal introduction, Jay is the CEO and co-founder of Eye Care Consultants of New Jersey. Jay is a clinical associate professor of ophthalmology at New York Eye and Ear. He is the current chief commercial officer of Nordic Pharma Eye Care. He is the chief innovation officer at iCheck, and he is the former chief medical officer of Allergan. And that is just a teeny little snippet of Jay's current and past accomplishments. But what's most important, and probably some of you have no idea, is that I've known Jay since probably before he started shaving, which is an amazing fact because, you know, for as you'll soon hear, Jay and I have a long history, but Jay and I have followed slightly different paths, and I want to spend today's time sort of discussing how Jay became who he is, and more importantly, discuss some of his current roles, which I think are potentially unique and potentially disruptive in the eye care space. So, Jay, that is probably the longest introduction I think I've ever given. It is also the most amount of time I've heard you not talk in a single stretch of time. So good for both of us.
That was a really fun eulogy.
Yeah, it kind of was. Well, thanks, Jay. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today. You know, we've been working on getting this set up for a while, right? You know, it's kind of an interesting thing. Jay and I are, it's very possible that we share some genetic material somewhere. We are incredibly alike in lots of ways. And that's not just because we kind of grew up a little bit together during some very formative years. I'll let Jay go through that in a minute. But we kind of do a lot of things the same. We sort of branched out from our ophthalmology clinical practices into different spaces. We wear the same watch, right? Like strange, unique things that we've both kind of developed independently, over the course of our growth. So we actually know each other's wives. I've been with my wife since the beginning of time, and Jay and his wife are at the same place where we were educated. So we'll go into all that. But it's great to have a discussion that's recorded, Jay, where we can probably use less foul language and actually have some dialogue about your particular path through the world of ophthalmology business.
I'm thrilled to be here. OIS, amazing brand name. It's been a great way for all of us to learn more about ophthalmology. Innovative, great meeting space, great camaraderie. It's brought a lot of folks in the industry towards a place that we call eye care. And I spell eye care, the letter I, C-A-R-E. I mean, it's awesome. Vision is a terrific place to right now in space. And, you and I are just in our primes. We've all contributed a couple of decades to our practices. I think what makes us special, Rob, is that we have branched out, but our base stays the same. Obviously, we all have family, we have faith, we have community. That's all important, right? But then that ophthalmology or eye care, I call it, because optometry and ophthalmology are great contributors to the eye care space. It's an amazing place to be in. And quite frankly, that's our base. We both went to the same undergrad, the same medical school. We go back
in time. Hold on, go back in time. I want to start from the beginning. So again, a lot of people know you, Jay. So I think it's interesting, but they may not know is the whole process. So go back to the beginning. Like, where'd you grow up? How did you get started? How did it become ophthalmology? Go through a little bit of that educational and, formative background so that people can hear. Because what you don't, or maybe you don't take it, maybe I take it for granted and maybe you don't, but is that I think there's a lot of people out there who are, clinically practicing or even in the business world who want to kind of know how you got to where you are. So I think it's important for them to hear the whole path. So start from the beginning.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in northern New Jersey. I had traditional, hardcore parents, very loving parents. My parents immigrated to this country from India, in the late 50s, early 60s, both scientists. And there was a huge, overlying umbrella to go into medicine, because it's a great way to contribute to community and a great way to make a living. And there's no doubt at that time it was a prestigious specialty. I think it still is, but there's no doubt there's a huge override on us. But both myself and my brother, one brother who also graduated from our same program, he's an orthopedic surgeon. So grew up in northern New Jersey, played baseball. Obviously the focus is academics. I always believed in entrepreneurship. I did sell lemonade, not for a penny or 5 cents. I sold actually for 50 cents. I sold less. I wanted to make a profit and then do other things. I worked at the bagel box too to support all my outside activities. My parents wouldn't give me really. There was no allowance. Allowance was just life. That was it. There's no other allowances. So it was truly a middle class upbringing. Quite frankly, that is part of my success. Having that middle class work ethic. If we could bottle that like Rayo's tomato sauce and sell it, I think, quite frankly, that would solve all the world's problems, or at least most of them. So that middle class work ethic, where you go to bed hungry and you wake up hungry, right? It's important. So then I got into, Boston University, where you went. We were both in the combined medical program. Mine was a bit of a longer track, but we were both similar type programs. That's where we met my wife, Swati. And I think you and I sat in the back of the class. We horsed around a lot. I think for me, it was on sale, Benetton, oversized sweatshirts. I had an Indian gold bracelet. You had a Jewish gold bracelet, and we wore Reebok sneakers, and we fooled around. We enjoyed it, and we loved being in Boston. We loved to party in Newbury Street and Allston and Brighton. But again, at no point in time was what we did everything we did. Everything we did is everything we are. So even back then, medical school wasn't all of my life. It was a big part of it. Obviously, my parents wanted the grades, and you and I did really, really well. I was actually headed for a career in cardiology. I fully trained in internal medicine, was chief resident medicine, had a spot in Longwood to do cardiology. And during that year, my wife was already going to ophthalmology. Said, Jay, why don't you spend some time at the Johnson Clinic during your diabetes fellowship during your chief year and learn about, my whole focus was silent ischemia, but learn about, the eye exam. And I went and did that, and I bumped into Lloyd Aiello, senior and junior, really some of the modern day legacy leaders in diabetic retinopathy. And I fell in love with ophthalmology, not because of my wife, not because of you. We were friends at the time, so I think before cell phones or active cell phones. But believe it or not, I fell in love with it. So 3 years of medicine, chief year, diabetes fellowship, and went into ophthalmology, got into Boston for my training, trained at BU. At that time, it was BU Tufts combined academically. We ran the VA, we ran Children's Hospital. It was truly a hands-on program. We came out really good surgeons, and I was able to get a great fellowship in cornea. It was contrarian to why I went into ophthalmology. I thought with my medicine background, I'd go into retina, but back then retina wasn't that hot. It was lights on, right, lights off. Now we have injection therapy, gene therapy. Today, the modern me, actually my daughter, who just got into ophthalmology, so she'll be going to Wills next year. She has a huge interest in retina, on gene therapy, the burden of healthcare with retina and so forth. So, but back then, cornea, cataract, refractive were hot. Definitely cornea. I did not like glaucoma. I did not like neuro-ophthalmology, but I'm a happy-go-lucky person, Rob, just like you. Mm-hmm. And I talk a lot. At that time, what suited my personality was cornea and refractive. And I was lucky enough to train at the New York Pioneer. Again, our alma mater. You trained in glaucoma. I trained in cornea with Mark Speaker, who at that time was very hot in cornea. I met Eric Donenfeld during that time. And Mark was Wills trained, was head of Castro Viejo Cornea Society, terrific guy, had an academic mindset, did a lot of work at endophthalmitis. And I learned to be a good transplant surgeon. We did sutured IOLs, and we also did a lot of LASIK. And I saw a lot of LASIK complications. I always saw too much of folks coming in, and Mark did offer me to stay on to be his associate partner, and I was thrilled. But the head that fed me was New York guy, and Mark, so I stayed on there academically. But I knew I was ready to operate in both cataract and cornea transplants and refractive and so forth. So I joined a practice in Southern Jersey. It was Wills affiliated. I had a blast there for a year and a half. They had me on a partnership track, but I just wasn't operating enough. At the end of the day, people don't know this about me. I love to operate. I love being in the OR. I love quarterbacks. I love presidents. I grew up reading JFK novels, his autobiography, 30 different versions of it. The Reader's Digest version and also the real version. And I love JFK growing up and how he really broke the mold, back in the early 60s to become president of the United States. So, quarterbacks, Troy Aikman, Phil Simms, they all shaped me, right? It's like you're in a body with people and you have people that are better than you and you allow them to lead. For John Kennedy, it was his brother, Bobby Kennedy. And obviously for Phil Simms, it was Lawrence Taylor and so forth. So, right, it's important on how you build a team. And that's a huge part of what I am. I'm about we. We use iPads and iPhones now, but I'm a we phone. I'm about we. But nonetheless, I loved it down in my first practice, but I wasn't operating enough. And I had a unique opportunity to become managing partner at an early age, in my early 30s, of a practice in Northern Jersey. It was a huge anterior segment practice. Big names there in the region, and I was part of surgery centers. I was part of leadership at the hospital, given my medicine background, and I inherited a practice that had 50% glaucoma. Not all trabs and tube like you do so well, Rob, but mild to moderate glaucoma. So back then, this is like in the 2000s, I became an anterior segment surgeon. I was treating glaucoma, cataract, refractive, and ocular surface, and for me. Now with MIGS, obviously, many of us are now anterior segment surgeons. Look at Dave Goldman, Carlos Pusnegos, great folks that are all cornea or cataract trained, but they're doing a lot of MIGS. And I've been one of the pioneers in MIGS as an anterior segment surgeon. I always bow to Ike Ahmed and Nate Radcliffe and Paul Singh, great friends and mentors of mine. But, I've been able to shape a community of anterior segment, which is a big part of MIGS. So, we've all evolved as time's gone on. I stopped doing transplants as I did more with industry. I was speaking a lot for industry, and I did go to business school in 2008. I said, what? I just need some more formal business training. I actually got into a great business school in Boston.
But wait, hold on a second. Why did you think that? What was it that made you think at that point that you needed to go to business school and get educated? Like what was going on that kind of led to that? Because I think that's the interesting transition point for a lot of people. I never went to business school, and yet I'm running a venture fund that I've had 20 years of on-the-job training in finance and investing. But what was the motivation? What was your thought process that was, maybe it's better if I actually get a formal education here? Because I think it's important for people to hear that.
Yeah. So for me, and like you, as ophthalmology, we all graduated, either at or near the top of our classes, right? We all done pretty well. So my high school class, everyone was a lawyer or went into private equity or Wall Street. So I sort of had that genome in me. I always know friends that did things outside of medicine, obviously in ophthalmology and in eye care. Now I have an amazing set of concentric circle of friends, but I always had that in me. I had business in me, I guess, growing up Indian American, where we looked at P&L as a family. Every week, I never lost money from my parents. I made some money. I never lost money. I was like disallowed. Sort of had that in us. And then I just enjoyed finance, private equity, leadership, cost accounting, strategy. I just love strategy and figuring out how you could sell something if it was a half glass full or a half glass empty. And I love team. I told you, I love team. I wasn't big into tennis or golf, which are great sports, but the more individual sports. I played club football at Boston University. I was quarterback. I played baseball in high school, and I was second baseman and a captain early on. So for me, being part of a weak community, and I like education. I enjoy some formality, and that's, you know what, this is how I want to do it. And we always create a variance with what's reality and what's formal. Well, we've done that. You and I did that in eye care, right? You and I aren't sitting as chairs of ophthalmology at great institutions. We're in the private sector. We're hybrid, and we're almost touching every aspect of eye care, for sure. You've done that, Rob, in your amazing career. One day I'll interview you, and I think I've done it too now in my, early to mid 50s. So, but for me, I wanted to do that. And I got into some great business schools in New York and in Philadelphia, but those are all more geared towards finance. And for me, I wanted the leadership, strategy, and Duke for me was amazing. I had a chance to hook up with Coach K when I was down there. I was actually team physician because Terry couldn't go on that trip. Terry Kim, a buddy of mine, and a mentor of mine. And I actually was team physician for Coach K and the Duke basketball team for 2 weeks in China and Dubai. And that actually changed me. That was like LASIK for me. I've always been an emotrope, but that was LASIK for me. How you take something like basketball and you apply it worldwide. And to me, that's innovation. Innovation is not necessarily the next iPad or the next iPhone or the next Tesla. It's 40 people to do more or allow more of that asset and allow more people to experience it, right? Instead of 10 people doing MIGS, let me have 1,000 people doing MIGS. So like you, I've been an educator. I did a lot with industry after business school, a lot more on the strategic side. I love marketing. Duke's actually number 2 in the world for marketing. So I learned to become a better marketer formally. And then obviously a lot of you and I are gut instinct, right? We are intrinsically commercial guys because we practice and things have to be covered, right? You have to have global evidence value, right? You have to have innovation. You have to have samples. You have to have coupons. We live that, right? You have to have access for our patients when you're writing a new glaucoma product or doing a new MIGS. So intrinsically, we're commercial. I think folks like you and I can't be hardcore clinical development. So it's been awesome to see some doctors and friends of mine, Praveen Dougal, Jay Duker, even someone like Fleming, who used to be at Bausch Shalom before Brent, who's another they're both mentors of mine, role models of mine. It's great to see physicians getting into the business world because a lot of folks in the industry say, oh yeah, you're a doctor. All you do is prescribe and operate. You don't know anything about business. And, we're humbled. Right. You go in-house and you learn what it's like to be part of a team of some great folks. So you had some intrinsic desire to become more formal in your business knowledge. You had this, you had some, upbringing, which forced you to be entrepreneurial. You had careers in medicine that were, sort of leadership roles in your practice and inside the regional community. But there was a desire for you, for whatever reason, to say, I think I can do more in ophthalmology. I want to get a formal education and see where it leads me. Is that the summary of the motivation? Because it's hard for people who are in clinical practice or earning a living and are establishing a career to just decide at some point that this pivot's going to happen. We hear about that all the time in the business world, right? People going back, getting MBAs in the middle of a career because they want to pivot from one thing to the other. You always wanted to be a clinically practicing ophthalmology, but yet you took that step to become formally trained so that pivoting was possible, right? Yeah.
And is that
without a doubt, I'll be very clear. I'm 20 miles from Wall Street, but I'm not Wall Street. I live on Main Street, right? But I definitely believe that Wall Street, business community, innovation, we need those partnerships. And I've seen that now going in-house at some great companies and so forth. But no, you do not need an MBA. I'm very clear. It's a huge personal toll. The fail rate was 10% of the 8 doctors that started the class. There's a class of 150. There are folks from Google, Goldman Sachs, McKinsey, Dell, all these great companies. And I learned from them, right? The group project was like a group project on something. It was a shared goal towards getting to the finish line. And I love that. It was very much a we community. And I enjoyed that. I was actually on the board, the Alumni Council for a couple of years. I went with Coach K internationally, learned a lot more. So it's been great. I got some more education later on at MIT in digital medicine and artificial intelligence. So I'm definitely a geek. I love getting some formal education and then applying it.
I would agree with
my
that.
World. I like applied education. I'm not that smart. I'm not that smart to be a PhD or to be, professor of biology. and so forth. But I love teaching. I love being practical. And at the end of the day, I'm a pragmatist, just like you.
So you get the MBA, and then what happens? You go back to work? Do you immediately step into industry?
Yeah, I got the MBA, but I did it while I was practicing. I flew down, Wednesday.
Right, it's the executive program, right? It's like every executive program.
It was a full-time program done in executive format. So same professors as the normal students.
Right.
Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, came back Sunday morning. And I, get top grades in accounting, finance, and strategy. I did 2 sabbaticals for 2 weeks each, once in Korea, once in China. It was amazing. And my classmates still to this day are some of my, like you are from medical school and undergrad, some of my great, great friends. And they've shaped me and I've shaped them too. So I just love being part, I'm glad I'm part of LinkedIn. My community keeps on growing and we all live in one place called Earth. So it was great.
What's the first commercial job you had? What's the first commercial or what's the first job you had after you got this training where you really felt like having the MBA was important for you? Like, what did you step into as a result of this?
But before that, in 2008, I finished. And then for 7 years, hardcore, I did a lot of consulting, a lot of speaking. I worked on strategy, not the usual ad boards of, hey, how do you use this drop and blah, blah, blah. Those are important too. But I started doing a lot of consulting directly with folks in the C-suite, vice presidents, senior vice presidents of different companies, startups, big companies. ACOS came out at that time. A lot of innovation at ACOS. OIS was in its prime. And I went to those meetings. I didn't just go to Ophthalmology and Arvo and Asterisk. I went to some of those bougier meetings where a lot of discussion happens in conversation. And they shaped me. Andy Corley shaped me. Bill Link shaped me. Dick Lindstrom shaped me, Eric Donovan, the list goes on and on. Mark Speaker trained me, but all these other folks helped shape me, and I listened to their conversations on the podium, right? Contemporaries like you, Bill Troutler, all helped shape me. We're all this great community. So I did it hardcore for 7 years. I did a lot of work with Bausch, with Alcon, with Allergan, with Aerie, with Shire, all the companies, right? All these companies have been a huge part of my success. But then one thing led to the other, and then at a point in time, a CEO said, "Hey, Jay, why don't you come join our company? Enough with all the other companies. Come join us full time in-house and be our chief medical officer, help lead up medical affairs, but help out with commercial, clinical development, be on the governance team, be the leadership team." And I went to Allergan in 2015, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Allergan to me was the McKinsey of consulting. It was the Yankees of sports. And quite frankly, there's a lot of folks now that are Allerganers, right? Jim Mazo, great guys, Andy Corley. I mean, all these great guys who may have spent some time at Allergan, worked with Allergan, great leaders, David Pyatt. And then obviously Brent Saunders, who's been a great friend and mentor of mine. He said, "Jay, come in-house and help out," and so forth. So I did that for 5 years. And it wasn't easy because I was still practicing boutique. I did do up transplants at that time. I gave up LASIK. It wasn't fair to see those patients longitudinally being in and out. And my partner at the time said, "Listen here, I'll take care of everyone else, but I'm not taking care of transplants and LASIK." So I gave that up. After decades of doing that, I gave that up and really focused on cataracts, MIGS, and ocular surface. Luckily, all those specialties are all very hot. So I still feel satisfied. It's almost like an OB/GYN, giving up OB and delivering, but still having a great career in OB medicine, not delivery-oriented, and GYN. And that's what I did. But I learned a lot. I had a team. I learned how to build a team in-house. I had very smart people around me on the commercial side, on the clin dev side, on the payer side, on the investor relations side, how to speak to investors, analysts, and banks. It's an art. I read Seeking Alpha all the time, those quarterly reports, and it's not easy, right? You've seen great companies like, Tarsus with Bobby and Aziz talking to investors. It's not easy when you're traded publicly. When you're private, you can do what you want for the most part. So I learned at Bausch too. I did a lot of consulting at Bausch One with Brent was there, and I learned how a company behaves when it's privately held. At that time, by Warburg Pincus. Another mentor of mine is Fred Hassan. I read his book, and I follow him every minute I can. He's been a great leader in the pharmaceutical industry. So again, we shape our careers, Rob, and you and I have a lot of folks that want to follow what we've done, right? When I'm at New York Eye, a lot of us, Jay, I've heard about you. Tell me more. And maybe this podcast will inspire the next generational leaders that are coming out of fellowship and residencies, right? We have a great specialty. You don't have to wait for 20 years. Do it now and have that work ethic now. But first, be a good ophthalmologist or a good optometrist. Get that base. Let folks have confidence in you. Go to advisory boards, do some speaking and so forth. So I did that at Allergan for 5 years. We launched some pretty cool products. Some of them did well. Some of them didn't do well. So how do you take that, and learn from that, right? So I learned a lot. Some amazing people around me, all great friends of mine, still friends of mine. And then AbbVie then obviously took over Allergan. And at that point in time, because they did no longer had a chief medical officer title there at AbbVie, they did want me to stay, and I wanted to stay, but a part of me said, you know what, let me move on. I did speak to some mentors of mine. Jay, 5 years, get a good run there. Now take it, go back and refresh the desktop. And that's what I did. I left Allergan, I think the same day or time frame that Brent did. And, Valdo from R&D and Bill Murray and Dave Nicholson, all great friends of mine. That whole, team moved on. And the next day, I signed a contract with them to be a consultant for them on the commercial side. Ultimately, I'm tied to commercial because you and I are physicians. We speak, we sell products to our patients by taking care of them and affording them some good, interventions. So then 3 years happened. I refreshed the desktop, did a lot more in private equity, helped out with your fund, helped out with Visionary 1, Visionary 2, good friends with you and Jeff Weinhoff, and did a lot of work at a nonprofit, did a lot more with the Glaucoma Foundation. And then COVID happened, and did a lot more with my family, right? And realizing the importance of family, the importance of time. Look, you and I have great practices, and in the New York, New Jersey area, there were body bags around us, right? And people were very, very scared. And we were at home in our boxers, growing out a beard, and my hair was as long as it's ever been. And we learned not to take things for granted. And then again, that middle-class work ethic that I so well talk about came back and hit me. But then I also learned that life's not working 40 hours a week. Life is living 168 hours a week. I've had that work ethic for a long time, but COVID for sure, Rob, accelerated that. So I don't work 40 hours. I don't know. I work a lot, but it's not work. I love what I do. I love what I do as an ophthalmologist. I was in the OR this morning. This afternoon, I'm doing stuff in my new commercial role at Nordic Pharma. So for 3 years, I did have recruiters calling me from Korn Ferry and getting jobs. And I remember Brent saying, Jay, take some time. Don't go to the first job. The other mentor of mine is Bob Bailey, who's a chief legal officer at Bausch, but back then was at Allergan. And said, don't take the next job. You don't need the next job. You do a lot of different things. And just really sit back and refresh the desktop. So for 3 years, and definitely because of COVID, I refreshed the desktop. I read a lot, did some work at Duke again on pricing and digital medicine, did some work at MIT on AI. I'm right now chief innovation officer in a part-time role for a company down there working on AI. So again, I went back to school.
About that in a minute.
I went back to school and I applied all of that to what I do. And I live 168. I don't work 40 hours a week. And I want all of our listeners to do that. Put 168 and McKinsey and math, go backwards. Subtract even 30, 40, 50 hours of work. You have a lot more to live, a lot more to blue zone and live longer and live more productive, spend time with your spouse, your partner, your children, take on a new sport, do some podcasting, grow some, plants in your backyard, be green. That's a true way to be organic, like our parents and our grandparents did. So that's what I did. And I was very picky on where I went next. For me, I had to be the right CEO, the right leadership, the right asset, and the ability to, bring people in the fold. So I've had now some opportunities last year and a half to do that. And yeah, I'm back in industry now, doing some
still
work.
Practicing. Were you still practicing?
Still practicing. I did partner up with private equity a couple of weeks ago, where some of the load administratively now is off my grid, and now in Innovate and help lead the group here we formed a eight group consortium, and we partnered with BlackRock, Zenith Capital, and Refocus, and it's been great.
On your clinical side, you're talking about your clinical practice, though. Right?
Clinical
so the
side,
clinical
yep.
practice, right? You're becoming a small platform, right? A platform program for you.
It's a platform, and we still shape how we render and deliver eye care. So that's been great. But then a year ago, I joined Rashid Taher and Ali Kirshnevis. They called me. I think they're friends of yours too.
Yeah.
With your fund,
company,
they're on your radar.
Exciting company, I check. Yep.
Again, shaping. So again, how did I apply what I learned at MIT? I applied it. I was lucky enough. I know, and again, I'm like you. I burn no bridges. I smile. I shake hands. I hug people at all the meetings. I've had a huge Rolodex like you for the last couple of decades. And Rashid said, Jay, my God, you do so much on LinkedIn. I see it. Why don't you join our company? It's going to be a great role, but you're an innovator. So I'm the chief innovation.
So just give the audience, just so they can hear it, full disclosure, InFocus is not an investor in iCheck. So people understand that there's no promotional value here. But Jay, has taken on a role with them. Just tell people real briefly about iCheck, because I think it's a fantastic company. And as we get ready to launch our second fund, definitely on my radar for, something if there's an opportunity. But why don't you tell people a little bit about iCheck, give them a little bit.
Yeah, so iCheck, again, when they say doctors can't lead companies, they can. So here you have an amazing optometrist, an amazing ophthalmologist partnered up. They've both done a lot of different companies over the last couple of years, serial entrepreneurs based in Miami. They're an incubator historically, and they've taken this company, this concept where it's a kiosk mentality, but it's a very cool kiosk, almost like Clear at the airports, and it helps digitize your front of the eye, your back of the eye. The Retina right now is FDA approved for diabetic retinopathy, using AI and augmented intelligence, and helping not take away from your exam or my exams, but helping vectorize patients towards seeing an optometrist, an ophthalmologist, or in this case, a retina specialist. So an amazing team, some former guys from Microsoft, some amazing engineers. I've learned so much at this company, and we're going to have some great new announcements later on this year, some partnerships, and the eye care desert where people aren't getting good care, where the local optometrist, ophthalmologist is 80, 100 miles away. You put this kiosk up, in the CVS's, the Walgreens, primary care offices, you're going to vectorize and gentrify eye care in these eye care deserts. Eye care deserts are also socioeconomic, where here in New Jersey, could be in Trenton or in the Bronx or in Newark or in Camden, and people just don't prioritize eye care, but they've got diabetic retinopathy, they got AMD, they have bad cataracts and so forth. So it's been cool. We raised some money. I'm a good fundraiser in general. We've raised some money. And this year we're going to have some exciting news and some partnerships there. We have partnered up with Aura scientifically to provide some research guidelines and be a research tool. So that's been great. And I've also been part of Visionary 1, Visionary 2, your fund, and some great companies there. If you amalgamate all three of those funds, I mean, you have 25, 30 companies, some of them very, very well, some great announcements. Some have gone IPO like Tarsus, RxSight. You've got some great companies in your portfolio. Again, not promotional here. So again, these are all shots on goal, and not every company makes it. But again, the excitement that we have in eye care is so cool right now. And of course, despite the payer pushback like we had on MIGS back in December, I think we always prevail, because right now eye care is all about consumerism, and it's growing leaps and bounds, not only here in the U.S., Rob, but for sure worldwide. And yeah, we have the big companies like Santen and Alcon and Bausch & Lomb and JJ, amazing companies, and Allergan, AbbVie. But then you have these smaller companies like the Tarsuses, the RxSights, and newer companies coming to market that only have maybe one or two products, and they'll get scale at some point, either through more capital contribution or through partnerships, or there'll be an M&A. And that's part of the business world. I love that, by the way. That topic for me, going back to business school, I loved M&A. It's almost like bringing two families together at a wedding. And how do you then,
So let's use that segue and talk about Nordic. So you're the chief commercial officer of Nordic, Pharma Eye Care. Tell us what you think, but tell us a little bit about that company, because there may be people who don't know Nordic. That's relatively new sort of endeavor, and tell people what you think your strategy is going to be there.
So it goes back to friendships and partnerships. I mean, I've worked with Phil Joy now. You know Phil really well for a couple of decades. Amazing friends, both privately and publicly. We've done a lot of things together. I'm actually on his board as an independent board director for a Retina company. After I left Alan Jay, I needed to download your mindset. You're an entrepreneur. Help, become an independent board director for me and my company. I've never done that before. I've done nonprofits and I've done SABs, but are you sure you don't want me in your SAB? And he's got a great SAB. Folks like Dick Lindstrom and Boyer on there. He's like, no, Jay, I actually want you as my independent board to help me shape the company week to week. So him and Carl Chalky, who's a great mind in Retina, I've done that for the last couple of years. I've learned a lot on fundraising, on trial management, on strategy, and going through a Series A eventually and so forth. It's been a lot of fun. So obviously, I think I impressed him there, or at least I made the cut. And then in December, just a couple months ago, he said, Jay, Nordic Pharma is huge internationally. They got a great platform in different verticals, different parts of healthcare. They're now launching in eye care. And there's an asset that a lot of the companies were talking about, wanted. And, Phil came in, became the president there, and he made a phone call to me right after Christmas Day. I think it was on December 26th. And I just got so excited. And Andy Corley and I spoke within 24 hours. I'm like, wow, you got some great veterans of the business that have shaped a lot at Bausch Shalom, at Parekh site, and Phil's got a huge background in generics. And he's done a lot of BD work. So I was in the space for them. I was told to make that cut, my friend. Here I am, like the lowest guy on the totem pole. Intellectually, they didn't think that, but I thought that in a humble way, that middle-class work ethic, and I was going to help lead commercial. And I've done that. I've done that before as an advisor and as a consultant, but I've never had that role. So folks say, you can't do that role because you've done it before. Well, neither has Donald Trump or Bill Clinton or George Bush or Ronald Reagan or Obama. Pick your president, right? A lot of folks, weren't shortstops for the New York Yankees like they were in high school, like, Anthony Volpe. Friends with my son, by the way. So, we can do things, right? And when they say doctors can't commercialize, yeah, they can, because we're on the other side. We are the customer. So when a customer can go in-house in a compliant way, talk about innovation and getting it to patients' hands would be a lot of fun. So our first launch is lacquer fill. And it's a technology that was born out of Florida. John Fezza was an amazing oculoplastic surgeon, and an incredibly boutique practice and a bougie aspect to it, where it's a filler mentality, right? It's a filler. We use it for faces all the time, right? In plastics and dermatology, but taking a filler and instead of punctal plugs for the, tear duct for dry eye, using a filler approach and taking it, and infusing it through the punctum, in a short procedure, high value, short procedure, FDA approved for dry eye symptoms, and putting value in a doctor's pocket while he or she is still prescribing medications for dry eye, for surgical cataract surgery, where we have to optimize people's surfaces for measurements, and even post-operatively, they're fluctuating vision. We know it's an ocular surface issue. So we're launching at Ascaris. We're going to have a booth very close to where the Bausch Shalom and the Allergan Appy booths are. We have a great MAB. Eric Donenfeld's our, chair of our MAB. Vance Thompson, Priya Gupta, Paul Karpecki, Lisa Nijam, Selena McGee, and Dick Lindstrom. And we've created some excitement. So it's been fun going to the meetings. And yeah, now commercial, I don't wear the medical hat no more. Our chief medical officer is Mark Packer, who's been a great innovator, definitely on the quiet side, but he's been a force in the market on cataract refractive surgery. So he and I go back actually decades, and now we've become really good friends and helping lead this and shape this company. So it's been
Nordic is going to, and Nordic's going to become an ophthalmology player. That's the bottom.
It's going to be an ophthalmology player. And again, when you're going to be an ophthalmology player, your lead asset's the most important one, because that's how people will remember you. So Nordic is a great name in itself. And they are, commercializing here They were able at the auction house to get this product, and we believe it's going to be innovative, has a CPT code, and it's going to be used around cataract surgery, contact lens overwear syndrome. It won't cannibalize any drops, by the way. Let me be really clear. It's not another drop. There's some great drops out there right now. It's MyBow, Bausch getting back with Fitograst, Vivi, obviously, Aziz and Bobby with Tarsus, and Extembi for Demodex. There's some great products out there. This is a procedure, has a CPT code. Doctors will create value while they're still, running dry practices and using it around the time of cataract surgery. So who better than someone like me who's had that experience to go in-house and help shape that with Phil. We have Craig Deshevsky helping us on commercial operations, Andy Corley. These are some great minds. I'm just happy to be the fourth outfielder, take my baseball mitt and help go shag some balls. So that's what it's like. So a couple of years, if I do that successfully, now I become a little bit more ambitious. That's what I want to do next.
Let's see. So let's talk about that for a minute. So look, the path, I mean, it's incredible when you think about, take a step back and figure out, or just think about the opportunities you've had, that you've created for yourself, that, the commitment to your own education, continuous improvement and development, your own skill set and growth. It's not surprising that you've taken on these responsibilities, that you've been around successful, ventures. It makes a whole lot of sense. What's the goal for you? Like, what's the end point here? What's the next step for Jay? Because it kind of sounds like you've done a whole lot of everything. So what do you want to do now? I mean, I don't, it's a little bit more than a middle-class work ethic. It's maybe it's a pathologic work ethic, maybe what it sounds like.
No.
But whatever it is, it's working, but there's got to be another place for you to go. So you're committed to iCheck, now you're committed to Nordic, but 5 years from now, maybe a completely different opportunity. What do you think the role for you is? What's the dream job?
I've never asked to be anything. Chief resident in medicine, I never asked to do that. I was chief resident ophtho. I never asked to do that. I was lucky enough to become chief medical officer at Allergan. I never asked to do that. Chief commercial officer, I never asked. So chances are, if I don't want it, I'm going to get it. So I wouldn't fix myself. But now that I've touched a lot within industry, both as a consultant, as a researcher, as an advisor, and so forth, I do believe in great companies can have great products. I love team. I really missed for 3 years having a team. I really enjoyed my team at Allergan. And then Brent and team put me in a stretch role. I did run dermatology medical for 2 years. That was awesome, seeing a whole great cadre of new people in dermatology. Very similar to ophtho, yet very different. But it was really cool launching some products there. And I do believe that eye care, unlike, dermatology and aesthetics, we live in insurance. We live in payer access. We live in innovation, but it's got to work. It has to work well. If not, it falls by the sword and by the wayside. So if I do this role well, and I'm humbled to learn from a lot of people, put together a great MAB and have an amazing bunch of colleagues, and I'm leading, obviously, but I lead by example, but I also have people around me that have done it for so many years. I love the C-suite. And quite frankly, I maybe be a chief executive officer for a company, small one, maybe a company of 3 people. But I do want to eventually lead and have people around me that I could bring in who are subject matter experts and let them grow, right? We do that in sports. We do that in music. We do that in industry. Fred Hassan talks about that all the time. Brent's has spoken about that, and other companies have done the same thing. So I'm in my mid-50s. I've done quite a bit. I have a lot more to do. I love taking care of patients. I love being in the OR. I love teaching other people in my local community and the regions and residents and fellows on how to get the next step. I want my cornea fellows to do MIGS and be the next best anterior segment surgeon. I've been lucky enough to be part of ACOS, part of Vanguard Ophthalmic Society, part of Cedars Aspen. They're all boutique societies, but nonetheless, there's a lot of overlap there. But at the end of the day, no, it is a middle-class work ethic. We feel we can do better tomorrow. And a lot of great actors have said, all right. My future is the mentor in me is who I'm going to be. Imagine iPhone 15 stopping today. We have an amazing iPhone, right? But there's already a blueprint for the next Tesla and the next iPhone. And I want to be the next Jay, contributing to society. On the board of the Glaucoma Foundation, the Lighthouse Guild with Cal Roberts, another mentor friend of mine. I want to be emceeing the 40th, anniversary of the Glaucoma Foundation. David Letterman's going to be one of our guests. And I was like, Jay, you're cornea. I'm like, yeah, industry labels you cornea. I'm an ophthalmologist. I'm already a specialist.
We're interested,
and we treat the back of the eye. We know what to send to someone with high-risk characteristics in retina for injection therapy and so forth. So it's amazing how industry and academia labels you. But when you're like you and I, that are on Main Street, it's that middle-class work ethic where you can be better and treat like people. So
I think the unique thing, I think the interesting thing, listening to your story and hearing about, everything that's gone on, there's two issues that seem to resonate, I think, personally with me and probably with most people who listen, which is that there's always the desire to better yourself, right? You always want to do better. You always want to, You always want to be better. I think there's it's ophthalmology, medicine in general is one of the places in the world where there's this continuous drive towards making sure you're not only competent, but that you continue to improve your skills in order to be able to provide the best quality for your patients. And I think that mentality follows us into the business world as well, where, for me personally, and you and I have spoken about this in great detail, why am I running a venture capital fund that invests in ophthalmology? It's because I believe that we can do things better. And I think that if I can impart some of my knowledge into the decision-making that helps propagate some of this technology into the future, then I'll feel like I've done well for not only the patients that I take care of in my office, but everybody's patients. And I think that's the motivation behind what you do and what I do. And what every clinician in the world does is to try and help people. But sometimes in order to help people, we have to make ourselves better too. And that's really what it comes down to, I think. And look, you and I could continue to go on forever and ever, but I think the summary for people listening is that it takes a lot of hard work and a lot of effort. But I think if you stay true to your commitments to do right by your patients, there's so many ways that you can branch out of a clinical career and be successful. And ultimately, if it ends up working out to be better for patients, then you're probably doing a good job. So I think you've done that pretty well, Jay. And
we both have, Rob.
Which you always continue to forget. This is your podcast, not mine. Shut up. You can interview me one day if you want. I am impressed, and I've always been impressed by your motivation and your commitments to making eye care better. And I think many paths that you've taken are exemplary for people who want to learn how to expand outside of their normal comfort zone of being in an office. And if you have that commitment or the desire to have a bigger impact, or I should say not bigger, but maybe a more global impact, then talk to Jay, because he'll tell you kind of how to do it and how to get it done.
Well, we all should think globally, but act locally, right? And,
right, exactly.
It starts with the patients, and I think you and I have that ethos. We've trained at some great places, and when we're at New York Eye and Ear, those are patients that had no other alternative but us as fellows and as teachers and obviously professors there. So you have to act locally, and then if you act locally well, then expands regionally. And some of us aspire to take it globally. You've done that in your career. I've done that, I think, in my career. I can now proudly say, without being cocky, I am confident that I've hurt no one. I've tried to help people. I smile. I go to the meetings. It is a cool meeting. I don't want
cocky. That's what I love about you. I love the cocky. Don't get rid of the cocky part. That's the best part. That's the best part, Jay.
I ain't Gandhi, but I ain't cocky either. Okay. I ain't cocky.
Well, listen. I think that we should probably stop now for the purpose of the audience, so that they don't think that you and I are dating too. But
it's a bromance. It's always been a romance.
I do appreciate you taking time to talk about, everything you've done, everything you're doing. I anticipate that in the near future, we will probably need to do this again as Nordic and iCheck continue down the path towards success that they are headed on. And I think that it will be great to talk about some of those companies in greater detail. I appreciate you, opening up your past for the people on the podcast, the listening audience. This was a fun one for me, going back to my roots. I have another fun one going back to my roots coming up that people will be hearing about soon. but it's always great to talk to people you've interacted with in the past who have become important not only to their patients and have become, locally regarded for their skills, but have taken a path towards making the planet better. And especially for patients with eye disease, Jay, you had a direct impact on the improved outcomes for those patients. So on their behalf, I'll thank you. But once again, audience, thanks for taking the time to listen today. Jay, Parekh, I don't know what else to say, buddy. Appreciate everything you've done and continue to do. And I'm looking forward to the next time we get to speak formally on this podcast.
Yeah, I'll see you at Asperis. And Rob, you just done a great job in your career on multiple fronts. You've an amazing family, amazing ophthalmologist, but your career has been also just unparalleled. And I love you on OIS podcast.
Just trying to become as important as you, Jay. That's it. One day.
Yeah, I'll be with David Letterman in a few weeks, but you did a pretty good job. And I can't believe we're already 1 hour up. That was so fast.
We're done.
But we're even talking about for 1 hour.
I know we have more stuff, but we got to do it next time. Thanks, everybody. I appreciate you taking the time. Jay, I'll speak to you soon.